Ahoy there! This is Nick Moffat, sometimes host and editor of the Retro Adventurers. Before we begin, I just wanted to mention that we recorded this episode several months ago, before we'd standardized our host's recording equipment. We thought we might need some material in our back pocket for emergencies, but it turned out that we have plenty of time to play games and chat about them, so we didn't get around to releasing it until now. You may notice a difference in sound quality from more recent episodes, but take heart. Nothing is wrong with your system or ours. So, on with the show, me hearties.
Ahoy there, me hearties! Hello there, and welcome to the Retro Adventurers. I'm your host this week, Ben Collier, and I'd like to invite you to join us as we dive into a couple of really great old games this week, and one newer one. To start with, we have the famous 10-line adventure. And we'll follow that up with Young Arthur's Quest, which originally ran on the Commodore VIC-20. Following that, we have our main course, Captain Cutter's Treasure, a new game for retro computers, which, as you might have guessed by now, has a pirate theme. Joining me today, our sailing master, Jason Compton.
Permission to come aboard.
Permission granted.
Thank you.
And boatswain Nick Moffat.
Ahoy, hoy.
Ahoy there, Nick. How's it going? Ahoy.
I look forward to sailing the rough seas with the two of you.
And Jason, you're responsible for these games this week, aren't you? Why are we doing 3 games and not 2?
Well, the format that we like to do is the appetizer game where we spend a little bit of time on it, and then the main course where we delve in. But I've wanted to cover the 10-line cave adventure for a while. And we'll talk about how the game works and what its strengths and weaknesses are, but I wasn't sure that in itself would be a full appetizer course. So as I started to think about, all right, what else might pair with it, I came across this long lost and kind of recently unearthed game, Young Arthur's Quest, which in itself, we'll talk about this a little bit more, might not have been a satisfying appetizer on its own. And then, we've talked a little bit about the sort of neo-retro scene, and we've covered a game from that neo-retro vibe when we did Down Among the Dead Men. But kind of briefly, there's been a renaissance over the past 10 years and really gaining speed over the past 5 to once again develop text adventures that can comfortably fit in an 8-bit platform. And with all that work going out there, primarily in the PunyInform community, but there's also work in Infocom-Zil. There's work going on in the Scott Adams format. So I feel like we need to take some peeks at those games. And this game, Captain Cutter's Treasure, was the top finisher in that first Puny Jam from 2021. So we had kind of 3 oddball pieces that didn't necessarily anchor a complete episode on their own, but being that sampler course together, I thought they might make a nice trio in a single episode.
So how have we now got the amuse-bouche? We've got our appetizer and our main course, and perhaps the 10-line adventure is an amuse-bouche, a mouth amusement for us.
A tray of text canapes.
So we were talking about news before this, and news and anecdotes, and I've been spending the last couple of weeks getting into all sorts of things, and had a couple of things to go over. I guess the couple that immediately came to mind. First off, isn't really Retro Adventures terrible, this? I'm sure we'll get complaints, but it is retro. I don't know, Jason and Nick, do you remember a game called Rockstar Ate My Hamster?
I do.
I do not.
Excellent. Right. Okay. I'm of a certain age, and I was at the football, taking my kids to football, and a chap got talking to me, and I mentioned this podcast, and he started talking about the Spectrum and mentioned Rockstar Ate My Hamster. And I don't know if you remember, but in this game, actually, Nick, you haven't heard of this. So you're able to start a band, and you can hire these pop stars or musicians to make up your band, and they're given these names which are clear sort of pastiches of pop stars of that era. So, for example, Salt and Pepper were Scratch and Sniffer.
Ziggy Stardust, Iggy Carrust.
That's it. Eric Clapton was Derek Clapped Out, and I think Fish was Cod. When we said to each other, "Do you know what? I bet we could use an AI and get it to produce modern names." And I wondered whether it would do it well. I was a bit skeptical. I thought that ChatGPT's sense of humor probably isn't all that great. But do you know what? We got Selena Gomez as Sally Gormless, Cardi B as Cardboard B, and this is my favorite one, I think, Kanye West as Kenny Pest.
Nice.
So that was good fun. And just to sort of put in something that is text adventures. Again, AI, unfortunately. I was asking ChatGPT for some lesser known adventures, really small, perhaps adventures with bad reputations that I might take a look at for a bit of fun, because that's what we do on this podcast. And ChatGPT came back to me and it offered me a game. Dear listener, please don't look up this game. I'm not even going to give it its proper title. It recommended a game which I'm going to call Mad Party Funster. It's a C64 game, and I was shocked to my core. Gentlemen, you are both gentlemen. I don't suppose either of you have come across this one.
No, but it sounds like Mary Whitehouse would be unamused.
She certainly would be unamused, and it's let's just say that I was slightly shocked at ChatGPT's choice of computer game.
The collective unconscious of the internet, I suppose, shining through in its less glamorous aspects.
Sadly so.
Now, if you get the right magazines, you will find other such titles in the back pages and the small classified ads that it was a thing.
And right, enough of that. Let's get on to our first game. Right, so let's start with our first game. We've got the 10-line adventure. Now, I think I erroneously at the top of this, I think I said old game. It feels like an old game. It's not an old game. It's pretty recent, isn't it?
Yeah, 2016.
2016.
And it is actually a remake of a 2007 game for the Spectrum. So this is partly a port.
Right, okay. Fascinating, amazing. So I had more fun getting this to run than I did playing it. And because I thought, well, I can see various versions of it online. Let's get it running on, of course, the BBC. And so, as it seems to be the case with this episode, I opened up an AI, and I said to the AI, "Here's a random listing for this that I found online. Turn it into BBC Basic." And it did it. It did it with one error. It failed to initialize a variable, and then I was able to paste that game straight into JSB, and it worked, and it was beautiful, and I was able to play the game. So that was really, really enjoyable for me. Found it fantastic. How did you play it?
Well, when I first discovered it, I had played it. Well, I was not the person who discovered it, but when it first came on my radar, because it was written originally for the ZX81. That's the base platform. So I did go through that experience. I cajoled a friend of mine, Robin Harbin, to port it to Commodore BASIC. So he's got a video out there that we'll link to where it's runnable on VIC-20 and Commodore 64. And just as an exercise to see if I could understand ZIL, I did a ZIL port, which is far more than 10 lines, but just as an exercise to, can I string rooms together and make a thing happen? So I've written a ZIL version as well that's playable in Infocom interpreters. So over the years, I've played it in all those fashions.
Amazing. And Nick?
So I first encountered this game in that Robin video. So I saw a walkthrough of the Commodore 64 port of this. However, I just straight up took it and played it on a ZX81 emulator, right here on my computer. So that was, I figured I'd go true to the original form.
Back to the source.
Exactly.
Nice. Okay, so it's pretty rudimentary, isn't it? And to be honest with you, you can't really complain given that it's 10 lines of BASIC.
No, really, you can't.
It took me a little bit of a while to realize that it wouldn't tell me when an object was in a room unless I specifically said look. I think, was it look? You had to actually say look when you got to the room, and then it would tell you.
Yeah, that's exactly true.
And that caught me out for a little bit. But then after that, it became quite. This is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Looking at the code, and I don't know how deeply we're going to go into this. I think we could, you were saying, Nick, just above the program, you were saying, we could talk about this for donkey's years because there's so much interesting stuff in the code, the way it was put together. There was some really clever little hacks in there. I mean, Jason, you've ported this. You can probably speak to those.
Well, let's just back up and talk about what you do and do not get in playing this game. There is no
right.
There is no elaborate introduction. There is no plot as such. But you do find yourself in a small realm in which there is a dragon that ultimately you just kind of know you need to slay. So you have a few rooms to navigate. You have a couple of rudimentary puzzles to solve. and you can win this game. So there's not plot, there's not elaborate descriptions, and when we talk about the technical aspects, we can talk about why there are no elaborate descriptions. But it's really one of the smallest self-contained games that, even if you can't say it has a plot, it does at least have progression through puzzles.
Yeah. So I think the other thing to bring up is that this was an entry into a 2016 contest. It was a 10-line basic contest. And it is my understanding this is the first ever one to place or be submitted for the ZX81. And so it was submitted in the 120 character per line category, because that's the way that it's sort of like, I guess in boxing, you have the weight classes. It's sort of that, right? Like how much code can you cram onto one line in any particular one of your 10 lines? And so this was the 120 character, which is about middleweight. Now I have here the actual submission text, just to give you an idea of the actual amount of backstory and features you get. It opens up and says, 10-liner cave adventure, a ZX81 game by Einar Saukas. Backstory. As a young warrior apprentice, you have been chosen by the village elders to seek out the evil menace that lurks in some nearby caves. Once found, use any means at your disposal to defeat it. Good luck on your quest. And then it says commands. And it says, this is a very simple, tiny text adventure for the ZX81, coded in 10 lines only. It recognizes the following commands. So it has 6 that don't take an object: north, south, east, west, inventory, and look. And then it has 4 that accept an object, a second word in your parser: look object, get object, open object, or kill object. And you are given that before you even begin playing the game if you've come from the contest page. And so that's the limit. Just to give, just how limited this is, it's important to know there are exactly 4 locations in this game.
But they're arranged nicely as a sort of self-contained puzzle. It just works really, really well, doesn't it? It's I won't ruin it for people. Normally when I say that, I then go on to ruin it for people. But there's a very logical structure to it. It obeys the sort of yak shaving approach to text adventures. This business of, I need to do this, therefore I need to do this, therefore I need to do this, therefore I need to do this. And so you have to do them in order to then do the big thing at the end that means that you've won the game. It's really well structured. I'm super impressed.
Yeah. And I mean, you have to understand also that the experience you get of playing this game is that if you do anything that is either outside of those verbs that I listed or is inappropriate for whatever the circumstances are that you're in, it gives you the phrase cannot do.
Yeah.
Right? That's the only feedback you get is cannot do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think perhaps I'm getting a little bit into the implementation details here to say that part of that is because this is done via a couple of very long strings, which have text of regular lengths that it sort of indexes into in the code.
Yeah.
So it has, I think, 4 words for rooms and objects, and then it has, 4 characters for rooms and objects and 9 for output messages. And so that cannot do is the same length as, something like you walk or, and then a lot of these other ones have a word like opened if you open something, and then a number of spaces after. So very often the sort of the spacing in the output will be very strange. But again, what do you want for 10 lines?
That was fantastic. And I mean, I didn't go through this in vast quantities of detail because I got lazy and let the AI do it. But from looking at it, it looks as though it does clever things with effectively orders of numbers. So you'll see 1 space between one thing, and then 2 spaces between another, 3 spaces between another, and it feels that essentially it's using that sort of layering of orders of magnitude in order to work out where you are and whether or not you're in possession of a particular thing. Very, very clever stuff.
The code inside does some amazing tricks. For example, it chooses which rooms are where, and it says basically, look, if the object number for this room is less than 3, if you're either 1 or 2, well, then you can go one direction, and if you're above that, then you can go the other direction, right? There's a couple of little things like that to make it easier for them to automatically lay out the grid of the sort of the map of the rooms. And then also there's a lot of use of inline tests where you end up, because it's using a number to figure out where in the text it'll print out and where it will sort of vector off into to have an action, to have an effect on the world.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
It's going to do things like, it'll build up this number of what it's going to do, and then it will multiply that by a test of a particular condition. And obviously, if that test fails, it becomes 0, and that number goes right back down to 0, having no effect. And then it builds up another number and does a test, and that's how it makes decisions. I mean, must have been a pain to code in, but wow, that's pretty clever.
That's fantastic. It's amazing. All of the stuff the incredible genius stuff that the author of this has done. It's all the stuff that once you get professional programmers, you spend all your time trying to beat out of them to stop them from doing. All these little hacks that are incredibly clever, but you don't want appearing in enterprise code for sure.
And yet, for all that, it only placed 15th in its category in that contest. Now, I tried to find the contest page now. I got an offline page, but Nick, it sounds like you found the initial entry. Do you know what games beat it? I'm just looking at the category list on spectrumcomputing.co.uk, and it just mentions the top 3 finishers, all of which are Atari 8-bit, because they have some amazing aftermarket basics, and they tend to dominate these contests as a result. Looks like there's a Space Invaders game, something called Graviton. I bet that's a Gravitar port. Something called Nuts. Can't tell what that is. But this is a pretty amazing game for us, and we are text adventure guys. And I have a feeling, because there are a lot of people who, as soon as they see text adventure, they just go like, but this is a tremendous effort. I have a hard time believing that there are 14 more impressive, 120 keystroke, games from that year that at least that we would agree.
Yeah, and if you're listening and you're a bit techie and you're interested in this. The experience of taking this game, sticking it into an AI that's got explainability, and asking it to translate it to another language or even another basic is incredible, because you'll see the thing saying, "Oh right, well I can't use this command. Oh, and I'm going to have to change this, and this because this doesn't exist, and I'll have to move this around." It's a really interesting process. I think I sat there for something like 5 minutes watching this internal monologue of this AI talking about how it was changing this program. So very, very interesting.
Now, Ben, this is the Retro Adventures podcast, not the LLM Truther podcast. But I do want. I know.
For some reason.
Hang on. I got to follow up on that, because I was trying to get it to run now, and I don't know if it's a problem with the emulator or what I'm doing with it, but there is a BBC Micro version of this out there. So this may be one of those things where the LLM says, "Yeah, I know all this already, and I'm going to pretend that I just created it for you."
You've completely ruined my evening and my take on this now, Jason.
More of this on episode 6 of the LLM Truther podcast.
Yeah. So taking it back to this contest, if I could, you ask, and it's interesting. So what won that year? And I will tell you, I've got the developer, Einar Saukas. I've got his page up for the basic 10-liners on the spectrumcomputing.co.uk page. And it's interesting because, yes, that year he took 15th in the Pure 120 with 10K Adventure. He took 34th in the 80-character category with a Simon Says game. And he took first in the 80-character category with a game of Othello, which I think is similar to Reversi, for the ZX Spectrum 48K.
Amazing.
So I don't think he left that competition disappointed. However, it is interesting that this, this 10-line game, which can run on a 2K ZX81, is to us an astonishing accomplishment. But he was recognized.
Amazing. I mean, it's these sorts of competitions are great fun. The one that I always kind of go back to is the International Obfuscated C Coding Contest.
Oh yes,
which is another one of a similar kind of. I suppose that's you've got that on one side, and then the other you've got the kind of 5K demo competitions. It's kind of halfway between the two of those, isn't it?
Very much so. Yeah, and again, you're trying to prevent production programmers from using these techniques, and they feel like they want to do it somewhere. And for a long time, the only outlet these people had was the sort of the splash screens for cracked software that can't be distributed legally. So not really as wholesome as just having a good old competition and seeing what you can come up with.
Yeah, absolutely. So we like to give scores, don't we? And this sort of thing. This is a bit of a funny one, isn't it? We can't really give it a score per se for it's being an adventure game, but certainly would I, if someone said to me, would you go and have that experience again of running it and playing it and looking at the code? Absolutely, I would do that. Anyone who's listening, I'd strongly advise having a look at this. It's great fun.
Yeah, if you appreciate the technical underpinnings, it's an amazing technical adventure. If you don't, it does represent a very small but tight little. This is how an adventure game works. And yes, there's the quirk of you don't get an item description unless you look. But frankly, there are other games out there with similar quirks. So once you know that. It is a very beatable game. It does not have any learning by death. It doesn't have dead ends that kill you. So it's actually very polite in that way.
There's no maze.
I assume we all finished it. We all finished it, right?
I've completed all the endings. But it's
made me look there.
But I think this for personally, I would recommend this to all sorts of people. I think if you can get access to the format in which it's in, or maybe get it ported to something else, I think it's an excellent little. If I were to give a demonstration of what a text adventure is on a big stand-up performance in front of a crowd, with slide deck and that kind of thing, I would bring this up because I think this is something where you can give a good encapsulation of what this field is like in a very short time and get people to understand a lot about it just from the way you interact with it. And yes, the cannot do message is frustrating and not at all informative, but at least then okay, I need to explore more.
And I think it's time for a competition. I would like to challenge our readers. I would like to see a version of this. Now, Jason, what's that cosmetic computer you're always talking about?
Oh, the
Clarion makeup computer.
Clarion beauty computer.
The Clarion makeup computer. I would like to see. I'd like to see a version of this for the Clarion makeup computer. Listeners, please take a look. Maybe do it by hand. Maybe use an AI. But we would love to see a version of this game for the Clarion makeup computer. So, send us in your entries, and the winner wins. Oh, I don't know what the winner wins. A Mars bar, something like that. Anyway, a good shout out on the next program. How about that?
Perfect.
Answers on a postcard.
Right, on to the next one. Young Arthur's Quest. So, this was an interesting one. I had some fun making this work. Chaps, how did you make this happen? How did you play it?
I was blessed by Jason's excellent work at making sure that I had the 16K RAM expansion on my virtual VIC-20 when I fired up the VIC-20 tape image, or disk image, actually. I let Jason do all the work for me, really.
I fell for that one. I launched the VIC with no extra memory and got lots of spectacular characters all over the screen. Right. I tried playing it on the C64, which was very interesting. Because it looks like some of the basic wouldn't work on the C64. So I got about halfway through, and then I got syntax error at line 580, which was nice. Jason, were you were VIC-20 as well, were you?
Yeah, and let's just back up and talk about what this game is. This was a game published in 1982, targeted for the VIC-20, but as started to become popular, and because Commodore kept reusing more or less the same basic across all these different machines, you would see on the Commodore 64 there'd be these little shim programs. There was one called a PET emulator, which wasn't really emulating anything, but it would move some memory references around so that basic programs written for the PET computers, which came first, could run. And in this case, there's this little shim program that, because the VIC-20, for being a low-cost computer, it did a lot of things that nobody else was doing at the time at that price point. It had color graphics, it had sound, it had a joystick port, had all this expandability. But what you didn't get was much in the way of text resolution, and the VIC's display was only 22 characters wide, which made it look okay on a television, but was not great for serious work. So in this case, there's this little shim program that will tell the 64 to pretend that it can only display 22 columns across, and so it centers the text there. I played with that a little bit, but I was able to get through it just fine on the VIC. There are a couple, maybe 3 different versions of this floating around, because there is one that does claim to fix up some of those syntax errors that it sounds like you ran into, Ben. I didn't hit any in my VIC playthrough, but it seemed like they were claiming that either it may have shipped unplayably, or because it was initially published on tape, who knows, maybe there was a byte or two that just read in out of joint, so to speak. This game was not a major label release. Who knows what tape stock they were using? It's 40 years later, because this game pretty much had disappeared after being published. You started seeing it pop up on the VIC-20 denial forum a year or two ago. Ranga and Blue covered it a couple of years ago as well. But this one really did go deep underground. So whether it was bit rot or just improperly tested for the 64, little quirky to get running.
And we say it's a minor label here. I mean, as far as I can tell, was it 2 games they released? The cover, if we can kind of describe that, it's a single color inlay for the cassette, and in a monochrome, just black printed picture, you've got a picture of Arthur there, doing his thing.
Doing things that he does not do in this game, but
no. And I want to say that this is if you want to get a sense of just how low budget this maybe feels. I've enlarged the cover image that I got off of price charting, and it looks as though what this is it's there is a normal striped J card from like a commercial, consumer level cassette tape underneath it, and it looks like someone's printed out basically a business card sized or CR90 sized a card to slip in between that and the plastic case. So this is very much that still that late 70s era of really homebrew homespun packaging for your games.
And all power to them. But I would have liked it if it had run. That would have been good. Okay, so I mean, I had all sorts of fun. Should we perhaps get on to some of my other travails with this a bit later? But shall we go through the start of the game and playing the game and all that sort of stuff? How did you first go about things?
Well, I personally just started having at it, and I did the thing where it listed north as an exit, so that's the first thing I do is just go north. And it turns out that's basically what you want to do. However, I very quickly got to, I think, the only ending I could find that insulted me, which is that, I encounter someone I assume was Merlin, who warns me about this cave. I go in, I get entranced by the lights. I can't work out how to leave the cave because the parser is not that friendly. And so I keep looking at the lights until my head explodes. And then it basically says you have reached the rank of Carrot Head, which I think is anti-ginger bigotry, and I will not stand for it.
Oh dear, I didn't even read it like that. I sort of read it as like your head's turned into a carrot or something like that. So. I don't know whether, but it's no, it was a bit silly that, and yes, I had the same experience. It's very, very difficult to follow. Very difficult to follow, and very difficult to work out what on earth you're supposed to do because the vocab isn't. Well, I didn't see the vocab listed. It seems to require you to do things that you have no way of knowing you should be doing. I can't see how anyone would finish this without knowing, without decompiling it. Or
so to give a sense of this, it has a standard sort of north, south, east, west location grid that you can walk through, and it's got a river on the west, and it's got a city to the east, and it has a cave to the north, and if you go to the southwest, there's a shore with a boat. It has an interesting map that you can sort of navigate around very quickly. Yeah. However, you have to know at various points that you're meant to enter something or leave the thing that you're in order to navigate through. And very often you have to know the name that you have to remember the name that you typed to enter something in order to leave it. So I tried exit. I tried all kinds of things that, standard sort of, Z machine games of the 90s. You kind of expect in and out, all that kind of stuff. But really I had to type leave cave in order to get out of that cave. And if I go into, a shop, let's say, I have to type leave shop. I can't just go south out the door or anything like that. It does have a good prompt set where it will tell you the objects and the exits, but it's not complete. It's not consistent.
And it was a little confusing because I have a feeling this game was heavily inspired by Scott Adams' adventures. And one of the things that I noticed right away when I saw objects on the screen was, some of these, in fact, most of them seem to be marked with an asterisk, which in the Scott Adams world means this is a treasure. So I'm like, okay, I should start getting these things because that's what you do. But I actually think that this may have just been that I did not try to pull apart the basic, nor am I very good at doing that. But I have a feeling that those asterisks may just be there to separate the objects out, and he forgot to not print them because almost everything is described as that. And there really is there's really only one treasure, so to speak, and you get it at the end of the game. So where that went awry, I'm not sure, but they definitely did not mean what it looked like it meant.
When you were at the cave, it was Star Cave.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Interesting.
Yeah.
There was a lot of magic in this. You just had to. I would imagine to actually figure this out back in the day, without the aid of kind of people's blog posts that I was eventually sort of, after tearing my hair out, forced to go and look at. I think you would have just had to. It would have just been trial and error, because you could do the whole sort of walking death, couldn't you? You could end up in a situation where it's completely impossible to win by just choosing the wrong shop.
Yes, because as we all know, the quest to rise to the rank of King Arthur starts by becoming a delivery boy for a couple of local shops.
Absolutely.
And in fairness, paying attention to the wizard when he gives you the hint for what you're going to need to do at the end. But most of the rest of it, I guess the business of getting access to Excalibur.
It's the DoorDash of the round table,
really.
right? I mean, it's ridiculous.
So actually, it was a game before its time. Like, this is really targeted at today's 20-year-olds.
Exactly. Yeah, so there's sort of this high street for the village of the East, and there's 3 shops there. And the thing that you also have to know is, because you've had this vision, presumably because you've gone north and played with the cave, and that helps you understand that, inside the king's, jeweled box, there is a key. And you basically have to go through this whole deal of figuring out how it is you get the ferry from this island to the castle. And it's something like you have to type in "say delivery." And had I not had a walkthrough, there's no way I would have found that out.
Absolutely. It seems completely magical.
He asks, what are you delivering? And it's like, why is this a part of the puzzle? Is like, I'm carrying in cloth. I'll type in cloth. Hey, look, he took me to where I need to take the cloth. Okay.
Yeah. And incidentally, that's the part that the C64 version blew up. I would say delivery, and it would crash.
So that's where there's a separate input. So I did actually look at the basic code, and that's where there is a separate input function for where do you want the delivery to go. That doesn't go through the normal parser the way everything else does. It
takes you out into some sort of branch in the code base, at which point it does something that the C64 doesn't like. I took a look at the basic code. It was pretty compact. It looked to me, it looked less like code that was meant for a different machine. It looked more like code that was garbled. So I do wonder if there's something about the image, and it was a disk image, something about that disk image that was problematic.
Well, Nick, you haven't gone through the code, and you also having looked at the Scott Adams published text. Is this basically the Scott Adams system in a funny hat, or did this guy come up with his own thing?
No, I think he came up with his own thing. Okay. It's very much not a database that gets parsed. It gets, gets indexed in. It very much is, the first few hundred lines are a bunch of text strings and a bunch of, data statements with, dimensional arrays and that kind of thing to sort of set up areas for data to go. And then once you get to around line 400 is where you start having these subroutines for things like printing the current location, printing the objects in the current location, chaining those together, that kind of stuff, looping over objects and items and things, and branching off to the conditional routines. Yeah, so it very much is like, it's what you would expect someone who knows BASIC to sit down and write a game in BASIC.
Okay. And another thing that I noticed that was pretty odd and unnecessary for 1982 was it seemed like there was no particular letter limit on parsing, which also was to our detriment because you had to type out everything that you wanted to do. Like, you had to do all 7 letters of examine, which not even Infocom until about 1984, I think, was requiring, because V3 could only do 6-letter parsing. So I thought that was unusual. Probably could have saved some resources by chopping it down to 3, 4, or 5, like Scott Adams did.
Pretty sure Z3 could do 6 letters.
It was 6,
and it was
Scott Adams was
4 that added to 9.
Yeah.
So that's why,
Yep.
I'll give this its due. The scene in the cave was pretty cool. I like the idea of, the whole sort of going in and, you look at the lights and you're mesmerized and you have this vision. I think that was pretty cool. I mean, yeah, that was good. Like Nick said, the map was easy to use, so that was a positive. But the game, as playable as a game in its own right, it's pretty unplayable, wasn't it? Really.
So I have two, and this feels almost cruel at this point to say, but I have two typos in the game that I wish had not been there.
I know which one you're going to go for. I know what
There's two. So the first one is, I mean, quite frankly, the final scene, you get into what appears to be a cathedral of some sort, and there is a cross hanging above an altar. Alter.
Classic.
It just had to be an A. That's not a space thing. Like, it's not a longer word. It just is. It's a homophone. I get it. I understand how this happened. But it's just a bit of polish that maybe some play testing could have helped.
Mm.
And then when you say the magic words and you give the speech that changes the world, that cross becomes the sword for you to take. And when you take, it gives you a triumphant "you've won" screen, which is good. I love a good "you've won" screen because then I know I'm done. And it says that you are now the king of Britian.
Yeah, it's good, that, wasn't it? I know, maybe this was a young chap who wrote it, and in which case, all power to him. We're probably going to get an email from him, and he'll be a couple of years older than us,
Yeah.
and dreadfully and mortified about our terrible review. But no, it had a charm of its own, didn't it? And it is what it is. But would I have another pop at it? Probably not.
No. Of your concern about Charles Sharp Jr., as junior as he may have been now, and as upstanding member of society he may be today, if the author of Detective can come forth after that game was given the unofficial MST3K treatment and stand up and say, yes, I wrote that game. Yes, I was 13. Yes, I'm fine with people making fun of it. If he can take it, I think Charles Sharp Jr. can take our mild, this is not a very good game. Am I sorry that I made us play it? No, because I think that something that we should be doing on this show is taking a look at some of these weird corners and pockets and warrens of text adventuring. But no, could it be an exciting text adventure to be young Arthur on a quest to become king? Absolutely. Should that quest end at an altar, as Nick said, after we've made a couple of local shop deliveries? No, obviously not. And it felt like there were a lot of objects in this game that really weren't implemented. When you're in the sewing store, there's pins and this and that, and none of those things mean anything. It's not uncommon even in more proper commercial releases to have that kind of, well, we set up a world and then we didn't do a whole lot with it. But you can see that there was something else roughed out here. I doubt he was anywhere near the 16K limit on the VIC. Nick?
So this is the thing. I parse that a different way. I think this is much more like Adventureland in the sense that he hadn't quite gotten to grips of how much space his approach was actually using, and he ran out of space and had to finish the last couple bits as quickly as possible. Okay. So I think that's partly why, you get the key in one fetch quest and you use it in the other, and the rest is kind of unimplemented. It really feels to me, and again, that's just from reading through the code, and he basically used the 16K expansion as much as he could. But there's, it's basic. It's going to use up a lot of space.
So, I guess we've been asked to do this, haven't we? Thumbs up out of 5, Nick?
Look, I think it's cute. I think if after listening to what we've just said, you want to go and look at it, I think you'll find it interesting. But I wouldn't recommend it to anyone as a game that's worth playing for its own entertainment or enjoyment.
And Jason?
Yeah, it's a historical oddity. Nothing more than that.
I enjoyed it for the wrong reasons. I enjoyed it for the simple sort of pleasure of attempting to make a broken BASIC program work on 2 different computers. But yeah, unfortunately, it's the one from me. And with that, on to the next one. Captain Cutter's Treasure.
Arr.
Me hearties. So this is a good one. This is a modern game built for retro platforms, thanks to the PunyInform language, which is optimized for old hardware. Jason or Nick, either of you, really. Can you take us through this? Jason, perhaps you've nominated this one.
Yeah, like I said, this was for Puny Jam #1. The PunyInform community has been pretty prolific, and they've got a number of jams competitions. I'm not interested in what the differences are, but whatever you want to call them, they have a number of festivals around the calendar. Really, the modern text adventure scene is very competition, festival, themed, seasonal, whatever oriented. And Captain Cutters was the #1 finisher in Puny Jam #1. It's by Gary Francis, who's been a very prolific author in this kind of neo-retro period. I believe he's also a prolific Adventuron developer as well. And just wanted to, if we were going to take on what is the newest game that we've taken on, figured maybe take the tippy-top example of this neo-retro scene where it's developed in PunyInform, so it compiles to Infocom's Z machine with that Puny library. That means that a lot of the stuff that's going on in the background does not bog down your Commodore 64, your Atari 800, et cetera, et cetera. Even those Inform 7 games of today, even on, like a tippy-top early 16-bit machine, like an Amiga 500, I guess those really, really struggle. So even for 16-bit platforms, the kind of contemporary development systems can be a little limiting. So this is meant to be an old-school experience, and there are but in a sort of the modern sharing spirit of the source code is available. The developer, put out his own map. Somebody in the community did an Invisiclues approach, so you can kind of get progressive hints for it. So it's kind of got the best of the old and the new.
Yeah, I really like this. I'll go straight to the end. I really liked it. I thought it was a really charming game. Nick, Jason, did either of you try to actually run this on a retro computer, or did you do what I did and have terribly noble aims, and then a few days later actually just run it up on your laptop?
So I had a copy of it already because I've played this. I think I played it shortly when it came out for the original Puny Jam. I had it in a directory already set, and I just ran my local copy of Froths on it to play locally again in a Linux terminal.
I had noble aims.
You had the noble aims.
I had noble aims. My plan for this episode, I'm going to get out my actual VIC-20. I'm going to hook up the SD card reader to it. I'm going to play Young Arthur's Quest on the real VIC-20. I'm going to put Captain Cutter's Treasure on the bit shifter interpreter. I'm going to play that on the VIC-20 too. And no, I played it in a browser.
Yeah, and I'd like to just give a kind of shout out to whoever put together the web page that I played it on. It had a marvelous pirate theme background. It was great. That was good fun.
Yeah, I believe that's the author's page.
Oh, that's the HIO page. Yeah,
that's his page.
Oh, it's the author's page. Fantastic. Good, great stuff. Yep. Yeah, great stuff. Yeah, skull and crossbones everywhere. Good fun. So yeah, having sort of resigned myself to the fact that I was going to be playing it on the laptop, fired it up. The premise is essentially that you wake up and discover that the eponymous Captain Cutter has stolen Brenda. I love that. Then I used to live near a childhood friend of mine. His mother was called Brenda. I was very pleased to hear that good old name in use again. But she's been taken, and you are. Yes, you wake up in a closet, don't you? That's right.
Which was a premise of the Puny Jam. All of the games had to start in a broom closet. I think they had a given description. It's not uncommon for these contests, in part to give them a unifying theme, in part to make sure that people can't just airlift something that they had already developed and submitted in the first minute and say, here you go. So.
I believe also one of the objects in the game had to be at least one broom, but it didn't have to be necessary for the game to play. I think that was the other condition. Yeah,
that's interesting. So, okay, so it's I guess the first thing that hit me was that I found it very, very well written. It wasn't too complicated. It felt to me like a game which I understood what it was telling me. There weren't any nasty tricks. The puzzles seemed logical. I could talk to people and they would tell me things that led me to discover something, that led me to talk to somebody else about something. It was fairly straightforward, I thought, the puzzle. So there wasn't anything that really, really, really vexed me.
Yeah, I think it was really complete. I think, there was nothing that was built out toward that did not itself weave into the rest of the story in some way or into other elements. In particular, I think the great thing was if you every time you meet a character, because there were quite a few NPCs in this game, you could ask each of them about all of the others, and you would get, sometimes just a short sentence, but you'd get a sense of who all of these players are and were, and the events that took place before the game started, which I thought was it really helped tie it all together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very thoroughly implemented in that way, and that this is clearly somebody who is aware of frustrations of games in the past where maybe talking to a character, you would only be able to ask them about 2 or 3 topics and they'd claim not to know about the others, even though they really should. So, right, you could even ask them all about you, Jim. You are a protagonist with a name.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so you can get their take on it. There was 1 or 2 places where a character, I think Brenda, didn't have as many responses as I thought she should have, which fits in with something I'll say a little bit later about sort of the second half of the game. But yes, this is a game that definitely understands the frustrations of the past of under-implemented objects. Most things could be examined. There was a little bit of examining nesting, which is kind of a neo-retro trend that I've noticed, where sometimes you have to examine the object to examine a detail about that, to examine a detail about that. I've
the
noticed
mouse hole, for example.
That's one example, yeah, where there's kind of a you have to look at this and examine that and then search this to take the thing to get to the thing. And I understand how that happens. I sometimes I've played some neo-retro games where it just sort of feels like a treadmill of I just have to unnest the Russian doll until with layers of examine until I get to the detail that I want. And I harken back to our when we played Avon, when we talked to Jonathan Partington about the lack of examine in those games and how that kind of nips that in the bud, where you can't then just layer puzzles around. Are you patient enough to examine every adjective and noun that's spit out onto the page? So I do understand how that treadmill is a risk. That said, this game didn't make me tired of examining the way that some neo-retro games have. Can we talk about the broom that you don't actually need to do anything with in the game? I thought that was a little disappointing, given that you were in fact responsible for cleaning up where is it, the Red Orchid?
The Red Anchor.
Red Anchor, I beg your pardon.
The Red Anchor is the pub, yeah.
I have to say, when I went down to the boat and it said I'd forgotten something, I thought, am I supposed to bring the broom? Am I supposed to take the broom onto the boat?
That makes more sense than what it's stopping you for. Yeah.
Yeah.
I said, I'm supposed to paddle with a broom, maybe. I don't know. It didn't. That confused me.
Yeah. So can we talk about kind of the puzzle structure? And we talked about sort of the upside of it, as we discussed, was there's not a lot of tricks or insta deaths or things like that. But there is that one section before you kind of hit that midpoint of the game where you can't row off to Captain Cutter and start working on this treasure until you have finished the mouse hole puzzle, and it just sort of says what is the I copied it in here, I thought. Okay, I didn't copy it in, but it's basically saying you seem to have forgotten something. Maybe it had to do with that thing back there. So this is the author saying, I don't want to deal with what the game would be like if you don't have it. And I understand that. I respect it. We did not pay to get in. You need to claim that, like most neo-retro games, this game is free. So let's set our expectations there. But it was a little bit of an awkward gate.
Also, this was written to a deadline, right? It's a competition game.
So it was a 1-month competition, right?
The fact that it is so well polished compared to even commercial games of the early 80s is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and it's about 4,500 lines of PunyInform source, which of course does not include the library, but it generates a fairly tight little binary at about 85K. There's both a version 3 and version 5 of the Z machine. Version 3 runs on some older machines that don't have later interpreters. You don't get undo if you play that version, but either way, that's going to fit on basically every platform that has ever been able to run an Infocom game.
Yep. It's got 169 objects in the Z5 version and a vocabulary of 529 words. counting all the abbreviations and everything.
It was beautifully scripted. Lots of lovely dialogue, and lots of the set pieces when things occurred were just fun to read. He's a good writer.
Yeah.
I think that came across. He's clearly a good writer. Yeah, and some of it reminded me of some of the games that I've enjoyed the most, because they've got that sort of warmth to the way they're written.
I think that's the most important part of it, is that I think he knows who he's writing for. He's writing for people who want to play these kinds of games in the year 2025. This game is 4 years older than that, but point being, he's writing to his people. And I think that really clicks. There were some places, like I said, especially in the second half, where things felt a little less implemented. Maybe the deadline was there, but like when we were exploring the pirate ship, and it's like, and there's trade goods here. I'm like, okay, based on what this game has trained me to do, I bet I'm going to be able to examine those goods and get some other. And no, you couldn't actually get any info out of that. Even in the Red Anchor, when you're in the beer cellar, I asked, drink beer. There's nothing suitable to drink here. I'm like, oh, okay. He wants me to open the keg. That doesn't seem to be something you can open. Oh, okay. Then I did tap keg. Violence isn't the answer to this one. I was like, it's just tapping it. But
and I it wouldn't let me kiss anyone either.
Not even Brenda.
Oh, did you try to kiss somebody, Smooches Collier?
I think. Oh dear. I think it's something you have to try in every text adventure.
I back that play.
It did have a response. It said, "Keep your mind on the game."
Yeah,
which I thought was fair.
Stock
library.
I thought it was fair. I remind me, what were the names? What was the name of the pub owner? It began with an H. Was it Humphrey?
Harold, I believe.
Harold.
Yeah. See, I couldn't kiss Harold. Same response to everything. There you are.
Yeah.
But no, lovely, beautifully written, very warm.
These are good, sturdy names. Harold, Isaac, Jerome, Samuel.
Barnaby. Love a good Barnaby.
Yeah. Barnaby. Yeah. Very Old Testament. What's Harold? Is Harold Old Testament?
I think it's Celtic.
Oh, yeah, it probably is. Oh, well, there you go.
Name or something.
Yeah. Very good stuff. Yeah.
So, may I mention, to its credit, this game does not have a maze.
Well,
however, it does have something that takes the place of mazes. All right, so I used to listen to Roguelike Radio, R.I.P. to Roguelike Radio. They were a fantastic podcast for a long time. And the equivalent to mazes in roguelikes, because of course in roguelikes you're typically looking in the classic ones, you're looking top down. They're all mazes anyway. It's fine. The equivalent to mazes in roguelikes is Sokoban. And this game managed to give me a PunyInform Sokoban puzzle. And I have so many pages of notes of me trying to work out where I'm supposed to push things around in that warehouse.
It was horrendous. I struggled. I'll say as much as that.
I was very concerned when I saw that. I'm like, oh no, this is the royal puzzle from Zork 3, and I'd seen a note saying it's not that bad. Don't worry about it. So Nick, you brought it up, so you go first on your experience of trying to decode the warehouse crate pushing puzzle.
Boy, look, I have to admit, I jumped to a walkthrough at that point. I had so much fun interacting with characters, and here I was almost alone in a warehouse, with these crate pushings. I just said, right, this is it. I'm happy to just go look it up.
It's the bit where you go, so you are in area C3.
Yeah, exactly. And that's again where I would say, this is where perhaps the deadline shows through. I don't know. And
sorry, you're saying where it shows through because he labeled the grid, or?
Yeah, because it really is just a bunch of, it's warehouse, whatever. It's like A1 through A4, and then B1 through B4, and then there's, for some reason, there's only 3 and 4 for C.
I think so. Yeah, something like that.
It's a funny L-shaped warehouse, I guess. Yeah,
that's right. It wasn't what you expected. There weren't. I would have. Maybe I missed them. I would have liked some hints as to. I could have done with some hints as to what was possible, because the whole business of climbing on top, I guess it was obvious. I don't know, but in the rest of the game, they heavily trailed things you had to do. So you felt as though you were. Even if it was, it wasn't genius level, but you were like, okay, well, I figured this out. I understand that there's this thing and I can set fire to it, or there's this thing and I could do X, Y, Z. But this felt a little bit like, oh, and here you go. Yeah, have one of these.
But yeah, let's set the context that we're pushing the crate around because in the warehouse we see there's a trapdoor, above us. We can't reach it. You can try, jump and whatever. You're not going to get up there. So it's the crate that ultimately lets us get up to the trapdoor. Go ahead, Nick.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, you're trying to get into the attic. I forgot. Sorry. I understand what you're asking now. Again, the thing is, you felt alone. It felt like so much of the charm of this game was all of the character interactions, the fact that all these puzzles were distracting a character or, bribing a character or otherwise, appealing to them and getting them to help you along your way. And given that, in fact, one of the win conditions was returning with a character, everything about this game is all about the NPCs, except for this one puzzle that takes up like a third of the map.
The thing that I think did this puzzle sounds like for the three of us. How did you first try to manipulate it? Because when because I did push crate east, and the feedback is that the best you can think of, which I'm sure is a default library message. And again, like Nick's pointed out, this game is being written to a deadline, but I'm a little surprised that didn't get brought up in the testing phase so they could trap it and say, just put, because what he's trying to do is trying to help us. Once you're by the crate and you push it, it pushes it in only one direction. You can't screw yourself up too badly. But we're looking at it as like, well, clearly we need to solve this puzzle by telling how we want to do it and this and that and the other thing. So I think that was a barrier. And then I found it unintuitive that climbing the crate would put me into another room. I felt like I've still got one more move I have to do, and it would say, oh, you can't, there's something blocking it. I'm like, oh no, how do I do that? And in his, and I understand this feels like it's like the definition of bi-monthly, which if you look it up in the dictionary, they're like, well, this can mean every 2 months or it can mean twice a month. Good luck. The solution of, if I climb up on this crate, am I in the same room but above it, or am I the next room over? And that's just like, well, that depends on how you interpret where the crate is. In this game, when you climb it, you end up one room over, because that's how he's positioning the crate. It's not so much in the center of this room. It's like going to give you access to the next one over. So there was a little bit, and to the point about all these helpful NPCs, I wonder if Gary understood what our frustrations were. It feels like a character might be, now remember, when you climb up on ask so-and-so about crate. Remember, when you climb up on a crate, you're actually in another room. He's got that format there. I feel like if he knew that we were going to struggle, he probably would have helped.
We could have had a troubadour to help us with the...
Yeah. The first thing I tried to do was pull and got told there were no handles.
Okay.
Fair enough. And then, absolutely, immediately, straight after that, push, crate, and I think it was east. And got exactly that, and it just confused me.
It's just the bizarreness that you can't. He's imagining it as that sort of roguelike top-down view where you are never actually in the same location as the crate you're pushing, right?
Yeah,
and that just didn't translate well. I think also, Jason, you and I have written PunyInform before, and the way that you do objects, particularly objects that you might want to move or stand on, is that they are objects in the room you're in, and they, if you climb onto a table in a room, then your location is the table, the table's location is the room. The table is transparent enough that you can see everything in the room while you're on it, and and everything's fine. And then from there, you would expect to have extra abilities to pull down the ladder from the attic or whatever it is. But it seems like it was really trying to mimic this game, this sort of arcade puzzle game, and it just came with a different set of expectations than we had.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's three of us who've written a PunyInform game. So we may have to have an episode at some point in the future where we do a round robin and mercilessly tear each other's efforts apart.
I have always been terrified. I'm a terrible programmer. I'm very good at making friends with programmers. So no, I've never successfully written in Inform of any sort. Like I said, I hacked my way through enough Zil to be dangerous, and I've hacked my way through enough dialogue to be dangerous. But no, I actually don't have any Inform experience.
Well, I'll happily give you license to be brutally unpleasant about what I've produced. Nick? You
Well,
too?
I have to. The game that I've produced is for a University of Minnesota Duluth cybersecurity course.
Oh.
I worked with a group there with a computer science professor and his grad students there. So happy to show that off. However, it is actually I believe a graded assignment still. So
Oh God. Okay, we will not go there. It is a silly place.
no, it's a fun place, but
Oh yeah, it was a fun place.
I'll get permission first before describing it on a podcast.
Fantastic. So, okay, so back to the game.
Yes.
Is there anything? I mean, I suppose finalish thoughts before we get on to our score out of 15 or whatever we choose. What final thoughts on the game?
So let me just say, if you go, the thing that I got tripped up by was because once you solve the puzzle on the ship, if you think, oh no, I think I dropped something there, and you go back, you just die instantly. That's it, game over.
Yeah, yep.
That was the only unfair death I felt. That was it, and it wasn't that unfair, really. It makes sense in the story.
Fair enough. Unlike Young Arthur's Quest, which had a few rather entertaining ways to die.
Going through the wrong door.
Yeah. Jason?
I found the unlocking code puzzle a little confusing. That was one for me where I felt like the obvious solution was the opposite of what it was. Again, kind of like bi-monthly. This is a bi-monthly game. It could mean the one thing, it could mean the other. So that kind of caused a little frustration and delay. But I mean, overall, yeah, I can see, not having played the other games in Puny Jam 1 that I can recall, but even so, like I can see where this would be, the best in show. I think it does a nice job of incorporating the best of the 80s with maybe a little bit more of respecting your time and being considerate about
unless it wants you to weigh some rocks.
Yeah. Would you like to expand on where you were thwarted in that one? Because yes, this is a game.
I wasn't thwarted.
It actually, like the Sokoban puzzle, which is not as terrible as dealing with the Zork 3 one. Yes, there's a weighing puzzle, the likes that the cruel mechanical engineers at Infocom would have foisted on us. This one's not so bad. Does not.
It's forgiving. Yeah, and again, I can roll my eyes at this and bluster around, but in the end, this is actually a fairly, none of it actually ever got me into a dead man walking situation. But there is a situation where you're basically doing, if you remember, I think it's the opening short to it's Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's that opening scene where you first get a sense of who he is, and he's swapping sand, an equivalent amount of sand for the golden idol, and you're basically doing the same thing. And so there is some amazing number of stones that you can do, and they have some amount of weight, and it's a little bit easier if you just start out figuring out how to weigh one rock, because you're basically swapping a chest of gold for a chest of rocks, or a bag of gold for a bag of rocks, basically. And if you get it off, then you have to sort of go back and reweigh and add one and take one and add one. I just wasted a number of turns, scrolling through my pages. But again, I never found myself going, oh no, now I've got to restore from a save. So
yeah, it's going back to what we were saying before about this being a competition entry. You sometimes see with these compo entries that people will release it, they'll get placed in the game, then they'll actually say, well, you know what, a few people have played this now and they've said X, Y, and Z about it, so I'm going to make some changes. And you see a version that comes out later where they've addressed the playability and things like that. Doesn't happen on this one, but for all of that, I really enjoyed it. So. Okay, out of 5, I suppose, I would say this was a solid 4. I really enjoyed it, and I think our listeners, yes, we've dropped spoilers left, right, and center, but I think if you're up for a good time, and it's not onerous. This isn't an onerous game. It's not something that's going to sort of keep you going on for donkey's years. But you'll enjoy it, and you'll enjoy the process of reading it. You'll enjoy the characters. You'll enjoy that interaction. And I would recommend that you give it a go.
I'm going to say I loved it. I mean, I actually played it when it came out 4 years ago, and so some of this was me replaying it and remembering certain puzzles and going, I'm not going to bother with that this time. So yeah, I would say it definitely has some rough edges on it, but it is such a polished game. I would absolutely recommend it to anyone. I think I would even possibly even recommend it as a first game for some people, just because, especially if they can come to me and ask questions about certain puzzles.
Yeah, I rate it 18 unadulterated bottles of rum And
excellent.
and more importantly, I would really like to see a Captain Cutter's Treasure 2 after the captain discovers the swindle, if and only if smooching is implemented.
Perhaps you play Brenda, Captain Brenda.
Oh wow! I would be up for that. I would absolutely love a second one of these. He's created in very few rooms really, and he's created a set of characters who are all very likable, and it would be enjoyable to see them all again.
And there's such a shared backstory. It's really good.
Yeah, it's great. So yeah, I would say 4 out of 5. I'll be the I'll be that guy on the jury who's hard to doesn't give 10 points easily. Really enjoyed it, and would love to give a big thumbs up to the chap who wrote it.
Thank you, Gary Francis.
Arr.
And on that note,
Avast.
That's the end. I think we're at our end. It's time for us all to walk the plank. Thank you all for listening, and we hope to see you next time on the next installment of Retro Adventurers.
You've been listening to The Retro Adventurers, a podcast about classic text adventure games. This episode was edited by Nick Moffat and produced by Jason Compton. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, including Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Podcast Addict. Visit us at retroadventurers.com and follow us on Facebook and Blue Sky. The Retro Adventurers is based on a format originally devised by Ben Collier, Jason Compton, and Dave Hawkins. Set sail for adventure.